Welcome to the Kingdom of Pod. Jeff Caves here in Flower Mound, Texas, just hours after Boise State beats North Texas in the Frisco Bowl and celebrates pretty wildly. Let me just state this. This is brought to you by Bet Online. And let me just state this first. I really want to stick with the game in this particular situation, and I'll tell you why. I think that there's a lot of temptation for myself or anybody that's discussing the game that is just a fan that's well-informed. They may be on a Bronco country board. They may be wherever else. They really want to get in depth about discussing the team. And we get away from analyzing, I feel, the game itself. What happened in the game? And then a separate conversation can be had about the totality of the season and how the 2022 Boise State team performed. And then I think there's another conversation about where the program is at. We all know, I think, where it's been, and perhaps there's as much interest about where it's going. And is this the direction that it should be going in? So for the purposes of this Kingdom of Pod on the Believe Podcast Network, I want to focus on the game. What happened between Boise State and North Texas? Now, there's some good reasons for that. There was 6, 7 guys injured. JL Skinner's on the sideline. There's all kinds of defensive people out. There's injuries during the game. Alani's out again. There's these kinds of developments that change any prediction that we may have had going into the game. And as I go back to it, I remember stating on one of the earlier podcasts that it's all about this idea that whoever's motivated will win. Fresno State was more motivated than Washington State to be in the Los Angeles Bowl, and they hammered them, for example. And I thought, after looking at everything, that North Texas wouldn't be motivated. They had an interim coach who was on his last real legs. Phil Bennett was coaching his last game ever after a 40-year career, and the team was sort of abandoned by the administration because they fired their coach. And they've got a new guy that some of them will never know, really, because they either may transfer or graduate. So all that stuff is and was present for North Texas going into the game. In listening to some of the commentary from the ESPN commentators, there was conflict in the pregame warm-up stage. So there was jawing back and forth. I don't know which side was doing the jawing, but I also want to get into the fight, because I've watched the video extensively and I have some thoughts about it. And I think it was one of the more interesting sort of developments of the game that had some clarification, but hasn't had all that much. So looking at just the motivation, I think that North Texas was motivated. They seemed to have it. It was an interesting atmosphere that we were in. While it's a bowl game, for some of the Boise State guys, they haven't been to a bowl game for a while, but for the North Texas kids, they were coming, 20 miles away. They've played in this bowl game. In fact, I thought they played in it last year. They drew about 11,000, last night. It was an 8:15 kickoff. It was 40 degrees. People bitching about the last Saturday before Christmas and an 8:15 kickoff. Boise State team, which didn't win the Mountain West, hasn't won big out of conference games, that nobody gets that excited about it. I was listening to some people just around me talking that it's not the same program. They were great. Now they're kind of rebuilding, and other people had their own perception. So it doesn't surprise me that at one point we didn't think there'd be 9,000 people there. If they ended up with 12,200 paid or in person, so be it. That's not many, folks. And so that's not a great atmosphere for a bowl game and a reward for kids. And some of the kids from Texas have played in front of a lot more people in a high school football game that meant more than this. So they had to contend with that. And I thought North Texas did better with it. I think there is also something to be said for the jitters for Boise State. Some of these kids playing at home, others, especially on defense, first starts, knowing they got to take a lot of snaps because of all the injuries that are out there. And so sometimes they're a little tentative. They're not doing, they don't want to make those kinds of mistakes, and they're getting a feel for the game. I thought as it wore on, they got better and better, and they trusted things. And that motivation clicked for Boise State in the second half. And I thought Talon Green, for his part, said that we just wanted to trust each other, trust our coaching, not panic, and know that we can turn this around in the second half. I cannot recall which player I saw in post-game comments that said, no, we knew we needed to turn it up. We were not turned up too well. So, you know, in different position groups, there's always different conversations. There's one big group team moment or two, but there's a lot of other things going on and a lot of other dynamics in a game. Before I get to the fight, though, and I think where there is a lot of interest coming in, we all knew the better offensive line, at least statistically speaking, was North Texas. They ran the ball real well. They hit big shots downfield. They were allowing less than one sack a game. It was the strength of the team. And we said this should be a shootout type game for Boise State to have a much better chance in North Texas as well. And it didn't necessarily end up that way, although, you know, you get into 70 plus points and that's plenty of scoring. But we knew North Texas could run the football, and they did. 176 yards on the ground. They hit some shots, 52 yards, 40 yards, 30 yards, 21-yard pass plays. They didn't give up any sacks. They even did better than their season average. I thought the coaches came up with some great misdirection, especially in red zone and 2-point conversion play with reverses and quarterbacks faking quarterback draws and then lobbing it over, sort of like the old Tim Tebow play. So there was some great coaching, I thought, at times for North Texas, which was a little surprising. Boise State, though, these slow starts are frustrating and concerning. And I know it sends the fan base down a rat hole of, not only are we not playing in the Fiesta Bowl, not only did we lose the Mountain West Championship, we're stuck here in front of very few people playing a 7-6 football team that's image-wise, historically seen way beneath us, and we're losing 10-6. I get that happens, and some people can't get out of that, and that's understandable. And that's what happens when you have slow starts. 120 yards of offense, 6 points in the first half. And they just completely switched things around in the second half. I went back. I think Dirk wanted to throw the football, and it didn't work out in the first half. He did have some other run plans for Genty, and Helani went out with an injury. And so maybe he had some things dialed up for Genty as a complimentary piece and Helani carrying the load. We don't know that. But one thing they did crank up in the second half is quarterback run. I mean, I looked, and, you know, Green only had one run in the first half. He had 11 in the second half, and we saw what kind of damage he did. So I'm not saying you can just go with all 4 quarters of that. That's stupid. You're not taking what the defense gives you. There's a lot of things that go into that, but I thought it was really a tremendous performance by Green, and it showed. Excuse me. The fight was a lot of interest. Okay, here we are, 2nd and 15, 3 minutes to go in the third. It's a 24-21 game. UNT had just scored to get the lead back, and things are intensifying. Talon scrambles out towards the UNT sideline. He starts hurdling too early and didn't really need to because nobody submarined him. So he comes down and gets hit, and Logan Wilson's there, and Nixon, the linebacker's there, and they hit Talon as he's coming down. But the damage was done by the defensive lineman Robertson, who comes over, number 99, 240-pound young defensive lineman, and he hits Talon late and knocks him on his back right on the North Texas sideline. And as players do, they start surrounding him. Now, this is how it started. The hit on Green was later ruled an unnecessary roughness. Usually that can be an automatic disqualification the way he hit him that late, but whatever. Defenseless player, there are all kinds of things that could have went into that. But Logan Wilson, defensive back, 5'10", 167 pounds of him, after Talon's knocked down on that sideline of North Texas, and it's like a bees to honey. He comes over and starts dog cussing on top of Talon Green, like players do. Luttrell takes exception to that. And so Caples comes over and pushes Logan Wilson. That's what started this thing. That push right there. I'm not blaming it on Caples because he came to rescue of his quarterback who was in a bad situation. Can you imagine being Talon Green on your backside, getting hit late with these on the North Texas sideline with 15 North Texas guys hovering over you? It's not a great scene. And he wasn't the only Boise State kid that came to his aid. But I do think that, when Cade Burserford came over, he tried to come to the rescue. He's a Washington State transfer. It sounds like he wanted to protect his quarterback. That was good to see. Ojukwu, I thought he got a penalty in this situation for an unsportsmanlike. I think Caples earned his. I don't think Ojukwu did. They got the wrong guy there because he was really doing his best to not get involved. And he had the kicker, the North Texas kicker, who was going crazy with punches on him. And then the kicker comes to his senses, number 0, and puts on his helmet and tries to sneak away, and the refs caught him. So I thought they got the right guy there. For the most part, I thought, Phil Bennett's reaction to the entire fight on the sideline was pretty good in that his first reaction was he showed a demonstrative pissed off motion that number 99 hit Talon late like that. And then I didn't see Phil Bennett get in there and try to pull guys off. I don't know if that's the right or the wrong way, or people in the coaching profession think that's what you do, but certainly Andy did not feel that their sideline handled that well. And if you compare the sideline incident that happened in the fourth quarter when the interception was thrown by North Texas and there was a tackle over on the Boise State sideline, there was no altercation per se. There was anytime there's one North Texas guy and 15 Boise State guys on the sideline or vice versa, you're going to get guys hovering and looking and acting stupid. And I hope coaches can get a hold of that and change some of that behavior, but nothing really, no penalties came out of that when North Texas was on the Boise State sideline, and away we went. The attitude towards these two teams, I don't know, but I do know that I did see like Leota, a linebacker, throwing blows that did not get any penalized, any penalties from the referees. So that's how I think it started. I think Andy was upset that Coach Bennett didn't control his sideline better. And it was hard to hear what Andy was saying to Bennett in the post-game handshake because ESPN was using audio from the booth as they were basically selling it into the break and done. And that was leaking over. And if you had different editing equipment, you could probably amplify Bennett and Andy and separate out the track of the announcers. So yeah, it got people emotionally engaged to a different level. And I think Boise State was already there in the second half, and there was a lot of jawing going on. But in the end, they got their victory. It was a hard-fought game. There was clutch performances on defense. The offense rose to the occasion and bailed out everybody and won this game. Talon Green brought the team on his back with all the running that he did in the second half and some key throws that he made. Great throw to McAllister for a touchdown. McAllister caught a ball. There's only one, and that was a plus. So just at face value, when you see the injuries that had hit the team, the things that had, hit this team earlier in the season, and all the travel and that, what was going on, and new coaches coming and going, quarterbacks leaving like Hank, just think about the celebration that the Boise State kids had, how good they felt over what they had just accomplished. And while I understand we're observers to this process, we don't have to enjoy it the same way they do. I think there is some middle ground in between where they're at and so jubilant about winning a football game, and where we as observers are sometimes. You only beat North Texas. You lost the Mountain West. You're in some bowl game with 12,000 people watching, and you're not even close to being a top group of 5 program right now that gets the college football playoff in this 4-team playoff system. You got to temper and put that in its place and learn how to enjoy what's going on in front of you. That North Texas didn't allow any sacks. North Texas got a lot of yards on the ground, 175 or whatever. They hit some big throws, over 200 yards worth, about 4 or 5 of them. They played their ass off. They emotionally were engaged. They played dirty at times. They were talking crap at times. So this game went back and forth. It was dramatic in the fourth quarter. And yeah, as we tune out that other noise, I think you can see something different that occurred. I am going to get to the rest of it, though. I am going to get to the 22 season. I will get to the coaching. I will get to the program where it is today and where it could be in the future, or it isn't going to be in the future. So I just think there is some way to communicate that maybe that's where we need to be a little more, and have a time and a place for the rest of it. You know, coaches have to watch what they say in the aftermath of an emotional loss and sometimes in an emotional win, that things run away from them. And, you know, in the NFL and other sports, there's this cooling off period where guys have to calm down before you start asking questions and they start giving you responses. So that's it. They won a bowl game. They finished their season the way they wanted to. They came back after losing the first half and dominated the third quarter, set a record for scoring points in a bowl, and won a football game against somebody that was trying to call out their manhood and take it to them. That they celebrate. I think it was great on that level. I'll have more to say about the rest of it, including the early National Letter of Intent Day signing coming up Wednesday. But thanks for joining me here on the Kingdom of Pod. I will talk to you again soon.